At Lakeside High, the last day of school was a whirlwind of excitement and relief. Students were eager to kick off their summer break, and the hallways echoed with laughter and the slamming of lockers. Among the throng of students were 4 close friends: Emma, Jake, Lily, and Sam. They had shared countless adventures over the years, and now they wanted one final memorable experience before graduation. Emma had the idea to explore the old paper mill on the outskirts of town. It had been shut down for decades, and though it was known to be dangerous, the place held a certain allure. Rumors about the mill abounded, but they were more about its history than anything supernatural. They cycled through the quiet streets, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows. The mill loomed ahead, its once bustling structure now a silent, decaying monument. They parked their bikes and approached the rusted gates. With a bit of effort, they managed to squeeze through a gap in the fence. Inside, the mill was eerily quiet. The large machinery was covered in rust, and broken windows let in shafts of light that illuminated the dust in the air. "This place is amazing," Jake said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. They began to explore, sticking together as they moved from room to room. In one of the offices, they found old files and blueprints. Emma picked up a file labeled "Accident Report, 1985. It detailed a fatal accident involving one of the workers. "No wonder this place shut down," she said, putting the file back. They continued their exploration, fascinated by the remnants of the mill's past. As they moved deeper into the building, they came across a narrow staircase leading to the basement. "Let's see what's down there," Sam suggested, always the adventurous one. They descended cautiously, the steps creaking under their weight. The basement was darker and more oppressive. Their flashlights revealed old storage rooms and machinery parts. Suddenly, Lily gasped. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. The others listened, and sure enough, they heard faint sounds of movement. Heart pounding, they followed the noise to a locked door. Jake found a piece of metal and managed to pry it open. Inside, they found a young man, no older than them, huddled in a corner. He looked terrified. "Who are you?" Emma asked gently. The young man introduced himself as Mark. He explained that he was homeless and had been using the mill as a place to sleep. "I didn't think anyone would come here," he said, his voice shaking. They could see the fear and desperation in his eyes. The friends felt a mix of fear and compassion. They knew the mill was dangerous, and they wanted to help Mark. "You can't stay here," Jake said. "It's not safe." Mark nodded, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I don't have anywhere else to go," he admitted. They decided to help him. They led Mark out of the mill and took him to a nearby diner, where they bought him a meal and listened to his story. Mark had lost his job and had been living on the streets for months. He had come to the mill hoping to find shelter, but it had only made his situation worse. Moved by his plight, the friends made some calls and found a local shelter that had room for Mark. They accompanied him there, ensuring he was in safe hands. The shelter staff welcomed Mark and promised to help him get back on his feet. As they left the shelter, the friends were quiet, reflecting on the day's events. Their adventure at the mill had turned into something much more meaningful. They had set out looking for a thrill but ended up confronting a harsh reality. It was a sobering experience, but one that brought them closer together. Riverstone High was buzzing with the excitement of the last day of school. Summer break was just hours away, and the students could hardly contain their anticipation. Among them were 4 close friends: Alex, Maya, Ben, and Rachel. They had known each other since elementary school and shared a tight bond. This last day, however, was about to be etched in their memories for a reason they never anticipated. Alex, always the adventurous one, proposed they do something unforgettable. Maya, Ben, and Rachel agreed, albeit with a hint of hesitation. Their chosen adventure was to explore the old, abandoned factory at the edge of town. It had been the subject of many local rumors, none of which the friends truly believed. The factory had been shut down decades ago after an industrial accident claimed several lives. Since then, it had stood as a rusting monument to a bygone era, slowly being reclaimed by nature. Despite the warnings and spooky tales, the friends saw it as nothing more than a dilapidated building, a perfect spot for a bit of harmless fun. The four friends met up after school, each equipped with flashlights and a sense of excitement. The sun was dipping below the horizon as they approached the factory, casting long shadows on its cracked walls. The front gate, once secured with a heavy padlock, now hung open, rusted hinges creaking in the evening breeze. Inside, the factory was a stark reminder of its former glory. Machinery, now silent and decaying, filled the vast, empty spaces. The air was thick with dust, and the occasional beam of fading sunlight filtered through broken windows. The friends ventured deeper, their footsteps echoing eerily in the cavernous rooms. They explored the main floor, finding nothing but old equipment and empty offices. Laughter echoed as they joked about the ghost stories, but as they moved further in, the atmosphere shifted. They found a staircase leading down to the basement, a place where the shadows seemed to grow darker and the air colder. The basement was a maze of narrow corridors and small rooms. The concrete walls were damp, and the air carried a faint, unpleasant odor. As they moved through the dimly lit space, they stumbled upon a storage room with a door slightly ajar. Curiosity got the better of them, and they pushed it open. Inside, they found old, moldy boxes and scattered papers. Among the debris, Alex discovered a journal. It was worn and water-damaged, but still legible. The entries were dated from decades ago, written by a factory worker who detailed the accident that led to the factory's closure. The journal spoke of long hours, unsafe conditions, and finally, the tragic accident that killed several workers. It was a grim reminder of the factory's dark history. But what caught their attention was the last entry. It mentioned strange occurrences in the basement, unexplained noises and the feeling of being watched. As they read, a loud bang echoed from somewhere in the basement. The friends froze, their hearts pounding. They turned off their flashlights and stood in silence, straining to hear. The sound came again, closer this time, a metallic clang, like something hitting the pipes. Fear gripped them, but Alex, determined to uncover the source, urged them to continue. They followed the sound, their footsteps soft on the cold concrete floor. The corridor led them to a large, rusted door, barely hanging on its hinges. Beyond it was a room filled with old machinery and stacks of pallets. As they stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind them. Panic set in, and they rushed to open it, but it was stuck fast. The room was pitch dark, save for the narrow beams of their flashlights. They heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, and approaching from the shadows. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, they scanned the room, their flashlights dancing across the walls. There, in the corner, they saw a figure, a man, dressed in tattered clothes, with wild eyes staring back at them. He looked as though he had been living there for a long time. The man stepped forward, and the friends instinctively backed away. He didn't speak, but his presence was enough to send them scrambling for the door. With a combined effort, they managed to force it open and bolted out, not stopping until they were outside in the fresh air. They ran until they reached the safety of their neighborhood, not daring to look back. Out of breath and shaken, they vowed never to return. The adventure they had sought had turned into a nightmare, and the legend of the old factory took on a new, personal meaning. The summer days that followed were filled with a haunting silence for the group. The experience had left them changed, with a newfound respect for the warnings they had once dismissed. The factory remained abandoned, its secrets buried in the shadows, and the friends moved on, but the memory of that day lingered. Riverstone went back to its quiet routine, and the old factory stood as a silent reminder of its dark past. For Alex, Maya, Ben, and Rachel, the thrill of their last day of school had turned into a lesson in caution and the unexpected dangers that curiosity can bring. Westwood High was buzzing with excitement on the last day of school. Summer break was just hours away, and the students could hardly contain their anticipation. Among them were 4 close friends: Katie, Sarah, Jason, and Tom. They had known each other since elementary school and shared countless memories. This last day, however, was about to be etched in their memories for a reason they never anticipated. Katie, always the planner, suggested they spend the afternoon at the old abandoned house on Oak Street. It had been a local legend for years, known as the Whitaker House. They had heard stories about it being haunted, but none of them truly believed in ghosts. They just thought it would be a fun, slightly thrilling way to cap off their high school years. The house stood at the end of a long, tree-lined driveway, its windows dark and lifeless. As they approached, a sense of unease settled over them. The place was eerier than they remembered. They pushed open the creaky front door and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and the faint smell of mildew. The wooden floorboards creaked under their feet, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Sarah, always the skeptic, laughed nervously. "It's just an old house, guys. Nothing to be scared of." But her voice sounded hollow in the empty space. They decided to explore, sticking close together as they moved through the rooms. They found old furniture covered in sheets, family portraits on the walls, and personal items left behind. In the kitchen, dishes still sat in the sink, and an old calendar on the wall showed a date from 20 years ago. The more they explored, the more they felt like they were intruding on someone's private life. In one of the rooms, they discovered a box filled with old letters and photographs. Jason picked up a photograph of a man standing in front of the house. Written on the back was a name, Charles Whitaker. They had heard that name before in the local legends about the house. Suddenly, they heard a noise from upstairs, a loud thud, followed by what sounded like footsteps. The friends froze, their hearts pounding. They debated whether to check it out or leave. Curiosity got the better of them, and they cautiously made their way up the stairs. At the top of the stairs, they found a narrow hallway lined with more family portraits. The eyes in the paintings seemed to follow them as they moved, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. They opened door after door, finding nothing but empty rooms. Then, they reached the end of the hall, where a single door remained. It was locked. Jason, ever the resourceful one, found a bobby pin in his pocket and managed to pick the lock. Inside, they found a small study, filled with old books and papers. In the center of the room was a large, oak desk. Katie rifled through the drawers, finding old letters and documents. One letter caught their eye. It was a goodbye letter from Charles Whitaker, dated the day before he disappeared. As they examined the letter, they heard footsteps approaching. They turned to see an older man standing in the doorway. He looked disheveled and confused. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. They explained they were just exploring, but the man's expression turned to one of sadness. The man introduced himself as Charles Whitaker. He explained that he had returned to the house recently after spending years away. He had been trying to make peace with his past. His family had died in a tragic accident, and he had never been able to forgive himself. The local stories of the house being haunted were true, but it was his own guilt and grief that haunted him. The friends felt a mix of empathy and discomfort. They offered to help Charles clean up the house, and he gratefully accepted. They spent the rest of the afternoon helping him tidy up and organizing the belongings that had been left behind. As they worked, Charles shared stories of his family and the happy times they had spent in the house. By the end of the day, the house felt less eerie and more like a home again. The friends said their goodbyes to Charles, promising to visit him over the summer. As they left, they felt a sense of accomplishment and a deeper understanding of the real-life struggles people face. The experience had left them changed, with a newfound respect for the power of memory and the importance of compassion. The Whitaker house remained a part of their community, not as a place of fear, but as a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. And as they moved on to the next chapter of their lives, the friends knew they had made a difference, even if just in a small way.